Bill joined us at the Westmount Rotary Club earlier this year, I believe. And from Brockville, I think you moved here from Brockville, did you, Bill? And
Yeah.
And earlier you were in the United States. And I know that you've been very much welcomed by Vivian, and she's quite happy that you've come and join us amongst the rest of all of us in the club. And Bill, I'll pass it over to you so we know more about you.
Okay, you wanted to hear about me, so here it is, folks. First, let me talk about my early days. I was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and in the late 50s, my parents brought me to Canada. Of course, I didn't have much choice in the matter because they wanted to live in Canada, and we settled in Brockville, Ontario, where I did my early days and completed my secondary education there. Then for university, I ended up going to Carleton and graduated from Carleton in 1976 with a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in labor history and labor economics, which kind of propelled me to pursue a brand new program at University of Toronto called a Master of Industrial Relations. I joined that master's program in its inaugural year at the University of Toronto, and I graduated from that program in late 1999. During my post-university days, I've had the opportunity to participate and graduate from different programs, but most notably was the Western Executive Program at the University of Western Ontario. And I completed, as you will hear more about my human resource background, the Strategic Human Resource Program from Harvard. My early work experience during high school, I delivered papers to lawn mowing to working at the Brockville YMCA and teaching tennis. During university, my summer employment including managing a township campground in Ontario. I worked various manufacturing jobs, and then I started working for the Canadian government because they paid better. And I had 3 great summer jobs. The first one was with the Canada Employment Centre for Students. Then I worked the following summer with the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service with Labour Canada and the Pay Research Bureau in 1978 in Ottawa. Interesting to note is that I became a Canadian citizen to work for those government jobs because I learned that I had to be Canadian to work for the Canadian government. So I achieved my Canadian citizenship in 1976. While at the University of Toronto, I enjoyed working as a teaching assistant in labor history, and then I had an opportunity in my second year of full-time study at University of Toronto to be a teaching assistant in economics at York University. From a full-time work experience view, I really had a desire, given my unions and collective bargaining thrust at the University of Toronto, I wanted to work for a union. I applied to several unions, both public sector and private sector, but was unable to secure work. So I landed my first full-time position with CNCP Telecommunications here in Montreal as an industrial relations analyst in 1978. Now, as I had achieved a 3-year degree from Carleton, my master's in industrial relations had to be completed part-time. So I did 2 years full-time, and they weren't willing to give me any more scholarship money or teaching assistant positions. So I ended up having to work. So I came to Montreal. But to complete my master's in industrial relations, I commuted on VIA's Turbo train to Toronto on every Thursday afternoon for 8 months from Montreal, attended evening class, and returned to Montreal on the overnight train to work at CNCP Telecommunication on Friday morning. Also, I had a course that I had to complete in economics, so I completed that at the McGill MBA faculty. Now, interestingly, on my first commute to Toronto, I met Lesha, my spouse. Yes, on the train to Toronto. Long story short, there was a father and a son that they were looking for two seats together. They couldn't find them. I said, hey, look it, you take my seat, I'll go find a seat. Hence, I ended up sitting beside my future spouse. At that time, Lesha was teaching here in Montreal and was on that train attending a UNICEF conference in Toronto. We married in Montreal, and I'll come to it in a minute, but she moved to Brockville in 1981. In February 1980, I left CNCP Telecommunications in Montreal and joined Black & Decker Canada at its headquarters in Brockville as the personnel supervisor. Through various progressive human resource roles, I was appointed the Canadian Human Resource Executive in 1987. Working with the executive team back in 1988, we relocated our headquarters to Toronto, our Canadian headquarters to Toronto, and hence Lesha and I moved to Unionville. In 1992, I was promoted to Vice President of Human Resources for Black & Decker with its newly acquired Quickset Residential Division in Irvine, California. And hence, Lesha and I relocated from lovely Unionville to Laguna Niguel, California, Laguna Niguel in Southern California. Then in June of 1995, I again relocated as I was promoted to Vice President of Global Human Resources for Black & Decker's Household Products Group, headquartered in Shelton, Connecticut. In 1998, Black & Decker unfortunately sold my global strategic business unit of Household Products Group to a small family-owned company, household products company headquartered in Miami, and I continued working for that company until I left in 1999. In March of 1999, I became the Senior Vice President of Human Resources with the Cardis Corporation, which is currently part of Realogy. It's a global relocation company. And I started at its global headquarters in Danbury, Connecticut, and we hence had to move from Lower Fairfield County up to the northeast corner into Richfield, Connecticut. I stayed there and I left due to a restructuring of the executive team. And when I left, I was the Executive Vice President, Global Human Resources, and Managing Director of the Global Performance Solutions business for Cardis. Most noteworthy at Cardis, I taught a leadership course in Fairfield University's graduate program and enjoyed leading a global business, which I found incredibly rewarding. It was a global intercultural language business for Cardis. Suffice to say, though, I had to do that in addition to my other duties, and I had a fabulous team working with me, so that made it a lot easier. The Great Recession hit starting in 2007, and I endured my first career break. In early 2007, with the looming Great Recession, and as previously mentioned, I left Cardis. That career break enabled me to spend time up here in Montreal with Lesha because my mother-in-law was in declining health. And we were making several trips back and forth, as well as extended stays here in Montreal until she passed, sadly, in 2008. The career break, I got to say, was an invaluable experience and one I certainly do value. During this career break, I did manage to do some volunteering. I became a member of the Economic Development Commission for the town of Richfield, Connecticut, which was a very interesting foray into local politics in small town Connecticut. After my mother-in-law passed, I decided to embark on returning to full-time employment. And in October of 2008, I joined Oakwood Worldwide, and they're the global leader in temporary housing for major league sports teams, movie and theater productions like Cirque du Soleil, and executive relocations. And as a result, we moved again. This time, Lesha and I relocated to Los Angeles, and I became the Chief Human Resource Officer for Oakwood, working for its founder, Howard Ruby. And then due to another executive team restructuring, I left Oakwood and relocated back to Richfield, Connecticut 4 years later in January of 2012. And then when we came back to Connecticut, I joined the Gershon Lehman Group. It's a consulting group, and I did freelance business consulting for until 2016. And then from 2012 to 2016, we completed several trips from Connecticut to Brockville as my mother's health continued to decline. And hence, Lesher suggested that we move up to Brockville. So in July of 2016, we relocated back to Canada to take care of my mother, who sadly passed in 2018. Passion for leadership. During my business career, I've enjoyed developing leaders by modeling the way and providing development opportunities to engage, mentor, coach emerging leaders. As a result, in addition to showcasing innovative human resource practices that I've helped implement, I've had numerous speaking engagements, including the Society for Human Resource Management, the Human Resource Association of New York, the National Foreign Trade Council, Manhattanville College, and Fairfield University. And one noteworthy event that I spoke at was I presented Leadership in Turbulent Times to the American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore in January of 2004. In April of 2003, I was featured in a cover story in Society for Human Resource Management's HR magazine called Forging a Partnership, in terms of how to engage CEOs. And then in June of 2003, my human resource team and I received a prestigious Innovative Practice Award from the Society for Human Resource Management for our innovative work-life program at Cardis. And in December of 2006, my article entitled Leaders Developing Leaders was published in the People and Strategy Journal of the HR People and Strategy Organization. Some of my hobbies include traveling, theater, music, venues, golf, water fitness, and real estate. And then coming to volunteering and Rotary, during my business career, I've been fortunate enough to hold chair and board positions with, the Economic Development Commission that I talked about earlier, the Corporate Educational Advisory Board at Manhattanville College, the Leadership Advisory Board of the Richfield Playhouse, and the Danbury Business School Collaborative, where we had about 700 mentors in the Danbury school system and the Greater Danbury Chamber of Commerce. In early 2014, I believe that Lesher wanted me more out of the house, so she encouraged me to volunteer and join a service club. Hence, I became a member of the Rotary Club of Richfield, Connecticut, where I was first vice president before relocating back to Canada. After coming back to Canada and during the initial period of providing care for my mother, I took a leave of absence from Rotary. Then in 2017, I joined the Rotary Club of Brockville, Ontario. During the pandemic and while on Zoom meetings and then afterwards face-to-face, I became the self-appointed Sergeant at Arms until I left this past December. During my winter stays in Florida before COVID, I regularly attended meetings and volunteered with the Rotary Club of Key West. Most noteworthy, in April of 2019, I had the honor and privilege of participating in a humanitarian relief effort to Chelsea, Belarus, with the Canadian Aid for Chernobyl organization. Interestingly, the Rotary Club of Brockville has been involved in this humanitarian relief initiative since 1990. And they have been very supportive of the rescue school or the orphanage that we have been supporting. And that clearly was a very life-changing and humbling experience for me. In terms of moving to Montreal, as you can tell, we've moved around a lot, and I decided that before COVID, once my mom passed, nothing really anchored us in Brockville. So we had been looking to move either back to Connecticut, up to Toronto, where we have a large group of friends, Ottawa, Kingston, as well as Montreal. And then COVID hit, that put the brakes on all of that potential, in terms of another move. And in November, early November of last year, I said to Lesha, why don't we move to Montreal? And so we've returned Lesha back to her hometown. And so we're now living here in downtown Montreal and enjoying the experience. And I'm very glad to now have the opportunity to contribute and volunteer with all of you, as well as other organizations that Lesh is involved with in terms of providing relief for Ukrainian refugees in the war in the Ukraine. So that's it, folks. That's my classification talk. Thank you for the opportunity.
Fascinating.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bill. Also, thank you then that you were basically just sprung upon, and can you come up with something over the next day? You did a phenomenal job on that, and it's I feel like I have a pretty good idea who you are now.
Bill,
Yes.
you said earlier in your presentation that I guess when you were still in school, but you wanted to, I believe, work for unions.
Yes.
And it sounds like you never got that chance. It sounds like you ended up on the management side the rest of your life.
Yeah, in fact, wouldn't you know it, I end up, I joined Black & Decker, that my second full-time job, which is fiercely non-union. I mean, I'd met Al Decker Jr., and, he fondly said that he put his manufacturing facilities in small communities that really cherish family values. And hence we were largely, well, actually during my entire career at Black & Decker, almost 2 decades, there was not a unionized facility other than those that we acquired. And then those that we did acquire, we were able to decertify the unions in terms of having great employer-employee associate relations.
Thanks. I've had a lot of experience with unions, mostly fighting them over the last 40 years because I was in the restaurant business.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what it's like to spend $250,000 to work on a problem, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But I respect unions in so many other ways, and I've seen a lot of restaurants that needed the damn things, but it's a real fine line between management and unionization where you go with this kind of stuff. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome.
We go, maybe we could do a general unmuting for this next part, which is the happy bucks, any news to share.
Can we stop the video?
Bill,
Yes.
yes, I think we can stop the video.